So please, those that have questions, direct it to a particular panelist on any subject that we've talked about or any subject we haven't talked about.
Okay, this is still for Jim, and this is regarding SSI.
Mm-hmm.
My son just received his first SSI check.
Mm-hmm.
And speaking of Googling, I Googled that the average 18-year-old eats about $170 worth of food every week, and
Okay.
his $600 and some odd dollar check
Right.
just does not cover his monthly SSI check. And I just wanted to clarify that you said if the individual is living at home, how does that check increase? How do you?
Okay, so so it's $600 and some dollars?
Yeah, like $630.
What you would do, you would make an arrangement, well, the check is probably auto-deposited into account, you're the representative payee?
Correct.
Okay, you set up another account and you have an automatic transfer every month of about $400 or $500 from that rep payee account into your account,
Okay.
okay?
Automatically.
Automatically, right?
Okay.
And that's gonna cover the rent that you're charging him for the room and his portion of the food. We go down to Social Security and we report that. That still leaves him a little bit of money for what's called P&I, personal and incidental money.
Right.
We report to Social Security. Now, depending upon who the claims rep is, who's at the window, they're gonna say, you know, I think, where do you guys live? I think rooms rent for more than $400. So you go on Craigslist, you find out, no, rooms rent for $400, and you show that to them. Or you can, many times, they'll just say, great, we believe you, he's paying for his rent, and he's paying for his fair share of food. His check will go up to $889.
Okay.
Okay,
So-
because he's not getting the deduction, because you're not providing him food and shelter, he's paying for it himself. So that's the reason behind it.
Okay.
I have a question for Jim. I have an 11-year-old with special needs, and I'm trying to maybe have you look into the crystal ball a little bit. What do you see, say, 10 years out that may change? We have hearing about a lot of growing demand, diminishing public resources. You know, housing's getting more expensive. The Social Security system and such are draining. What do you think are going to be out there in terms of alternatives, whether they're public or private?
Well, I think we're already seeing what we call an eroding of the Lanterman Act, an eroding of the services that you can get through the regional center. Regional centers years ago never charged any fee. Right now they can charge what's called an annual family fee. They can charge the family for part of if the regional center is paid for the residential placement of a child, the parents have to pay for part of that. If the child's not, another reason to get on Medi-Cal is that you can avoid the fee that the regional center will charge a family every year. That's because the federal government will not allow the state to charge a family who has a child who's on Medi-Cal. So that's another good reason to do the institutional deeming, to get your child on Medi-Cal, even though you don't have Medi-Cal. You may have private insurance. Get the child on Medi-Cal, then the regional center can't charge you that annual fee. But that's sort of the beginning of the eroding of the Lanterman Act, and I see that you know, going to self-determination where they think they'll just give you a budget, and God knows if that budget's ever going to increase, or if your needs increase, what you're going to have to do to get that budget increased.
Right.
That's going to be the real problem. One of the problems with self-determination. I don't know. I can't look in the crystal ball. I don't know.
Rident Park is one answer to that, or one element of that I think we see creeping up.
So this thought, Todd, is exactly
Right.
and it touches everybody here, but Dan, he's working with the financial plan and trying to figure out how to keep the music playing for several decades, with the idea that there's erosion against the public benefit side of the pie. So you still have a pie because your child eats $170 a week of pie, but somehow that pie has to be funded more and more by other resources besides the regional center in California. So it's prudent to make an assumption, I say this with great conviction, to plan on the worst, hope for the best, but plan on this erosion to continue, because the state of California has not looked favorably upon those in the developmentally disabled system. There's been some kind of funny money games in the past year about Brown signed into law a managed care tax that basically would be the funding source for an increase in rates for all these service providers that Jim basically interfaces with on behalf of families, because they're basically, as service providers, they're basically barely able to maintain their business.
Yeah.
They're on fumes. And so they got some rate relief. There's been some overtime regulatory changes, which actually is having some unintended consequences, because the service providers that have maybe 2 jobs right now just to make a living being a direct service provider, they no longer can earn it because they get overtime, and 2, they now have to get a 3rd job that's below the overtime. This becomes, so you go back to the self-determination program, you realize all of a sudden you're managing lots of different individual, sometimes independent contractors to provide service to your child. This becomes, so plan on some of this erosion while you're doing the plan and working with the Dans of the world and the Jims of the world, also funding your special needs trusts. So this gets interesting. Again, not trying to scare you away, but I think knowledge is power, and demystifying some of this black box stuff. None of this is really all that esoteric when you get right down to it, but there's so many moving parts. This lifespan plan has got to basically house, remember the engine, where there's one engine, but how many different parts are there in that engine? And this is a team sport. You can't do this by yourself. I don't care how many letters past your name, how much money you have in the bank, you need team. Todd, I know well, has Team Henry. Team Peter is made up of 2 of the people on this panel are serving Team Peter. Full disclosure here, okay? I and my wife spend full time working on this, full time in our retirement. Constantly going to Sacramento to learn what the changes in the law are. This is something that you really need to be engaged in. It's possible, it's not impossible, but dealing with professionals that are on the front line of this every day are worth their weight in gold to give you peace of mind that you at least have a pathway to manage this. Dealing with the sibling questions, dealing with how much do I self-fund, what's going to happen to that funding. One of the questions was, how do I determine what services my child needs, and who do I go to find out what he or she's entitled to? Simple question, but each regional center, and you just said it in spades, operates autonomously. So for instance, you could be living in the Golden Gate Regional Center area and then move to the North Bay Regional Center area, and I'm telling you, the ground rules are quite different. And so there is a movement there where people are thinking that they're going to force the legislation on a one-size-fits-all standard so that all these regional centers work at least within a similar bandwidth, so that when you transition from one regional center area to another, there's some basic core standardization. But let me tell you, because the way they were set up creates this interpretation of the law the way that that regional center chooses to, based on their business model. So there was wisdom in that in the beginning,
Yeah.
but it also has a soft underbelly. So again, we're winding down here, so if I'm sounding like I'm sort of wrapping up, and I'll take a couple more questions, but you really need to engage and create a team. And by the way, this you as either friends of each other or you're in communities of other special needs family, you need to basically create a team right there. The resources and the knowledge that you have to bring to bear for your neighbor or somebody like situation is invaluable. And so a lot of what our family learned was from other families who were farther ahead in the process. Now we're in the process of giving back, of sharing. That's what this is about today, is basically trying to help others kind of get to where we are. And by the way, the Grotti family is not nearly done. It's a work in progress. It's continually evolving, but start figuring out who you can network with. A lot of the agencies like Matrix Parents, Abilities United, Autism Society of the Bay Area with Jill Escher is the president of that. By the way, I'm going to give you a commercial break on December 3rd, Saturday, December 3rd, on this campus at the LKS Center. Jim will be one of the panelists there. It's going to be an all-day affair. I mean, again, I'm ready to say we need to sign up for the evening session here because the amount of questions we have are incredible, and so there's unmet demand. But you need to plug into these things because you're learning from others. A lot of people here, like these panelists, aren't getting paid for being here. They're giving up a valuable time to come and do a public service. But you need to be in the game, and I don't mean to chastise. This is team sport. Get in the game, network, ask your advisors the dumb questions, because there are none, and they will tell you when they don't know, and probably they know that a Mike and a Jim might work together. You basically get the power of the network, but you need to create a team. And then I want to take a few more questions, and then we're going to close real quickly.
Hi, my question is for Jim. I believe you mentioned earlier that Medicare is better than Medi-Cal. I have a daughter, she's 35 years old. She's on SSI and has been since before the age of 22. I just recently found out that her dad is now collecting Social Security disability. And so...
What happens is that when he took out that disability, one of the questions they asked him was, does he have any disabled children? And he would have had to have claimed that he has a disabled child in order for her now to go in and have her benefits transferred from SSI over to SSDI off of his account. That's usually the biggest stumbling block.
Okay, so but Medicare is...
Oh, and Medicare, yeah, Medi-Cal. Well, California a few years ago, as you probably know, in all 58 counties, they require the Medi-Cal to be provided through HMOs or PPOs. It used to be you just had what's called straight Medi-Cal. You'd take your Medi-Cal card and you'd beg and plead with the doctor or hospital to please take it. Now, it's through an HMO. If you're in Orange County, it's, one program. In LA, it's LA Care, or it's, whatever, Anthem Blue Cross. Now, your Medi-Cal is through those providers. But first of all, it's really hard to even find one who's taking new people, right, if you're on Medi-Cal, or to find a physician that is going to meet the needs of your special child, because they have special needs. And you have a relationship with many of the doctors already, and odds are that those doctors probably aren't covered by any of those Medi-Cal plans. Medicare is a little better. You've got some better choices. It pays better, so doctors and the hospitals tend to accept the Medicare patients more than they do Medi-Cal patients.
Last question over here. This gentleman gets the...
You can ask me afterwards if you want.
This ties in with that question. I have a brother that gets SSDI based on my father's record, and from that he gets Medicare. But he also had SSI. He only got about $20 a month.
He had it or has it?
He had it.
Okay.
So the Medi-Cal paid for his Medicare.
Yep. Part B.
And it paid for his drugs.
Medications, yeah.
Yeah, but we had to move him to more expensive housing, and he lost his SSI. So is there any way to get the SSI or the Medi-Cal back?
He should have been able to stay on SSI and Medi-Cal through what's called the Pickle Amendment. Congressman Pickle a long time ago said it wasn't fair that people lose their Medi-Cal just because they get Social Security. Actually, what he was looking at was the cost of living increases that people would get on their Social Security to the point that they'd lose their SSI.
So what happened was his rent is more than his Social Security.
So why did that cause him to?
Because you need to bring in outside money to pay for the rent and the food, which causes you to lose the SSI, which then causes you to lose the Medi-Cal.
Okay, so that's how he lost it. Yeah. So your question is, how do you get him back on the Medi-Cal?
Is there some way to do it without moving him to less expensive housing?
Not that I know of.
Okay. I'll talk with you after. Okay.
So, I want to just do two more things, and then at 6 o'clock, the panelists have agreed to stay a little bit after to mingle for those that want to ask a couple of questions. So what I want to do is I want to ask Brian Nider to say some closing comments for us, impressions of my partner in crime, and we basically cheated him out of his moment in the sun in the beginning.
For those who are old enough to remember Phil Donahue, I feel like I'm working the floor here. So first of all, I want to thank our panelists, Jim, Mercy, Mike, Dan. And a huge round of applause to Larry. The amount of time and energy he's put into this is incredible. Behind the scenes, I'd like the Gatepath staff to stand up. So we had a lot of folks working on this. Julia on the marketing, Jean on helping coordinate all of this. We've got a great team here working to put everything together. And for all of you, a couple of things in terms of resources. We put this together to really help share a lot more knowledge in the community. We sent out the invite to all sorts of local services, other agencies, to be able to share it with their families. And as Larry talked about, it really is the community that we have that's got to share the knowledge of how to work an incredibly complicated system. You heard today how incredibly hard it is to work to get the system to support you. We do have two resources I want to share with you. So Pete Carrier right here works with our Family Resource Center. Pete, you want to stand up? This is a family-to-family service. You can reach out, call the Family Resource Center. You can go online. The other thing is we will be posting all of the materials from today, the video from it, the full session. We are going to have a lot of the questions that we can get to. We're going to try to have those answered and post those as well. So we're going to do our best to make this a resource for all of you. Please feel free to share it. It's going to be at gatepath.org. And a ask I have for all of you. We are pushing for inclusion in the community. This is our big mission, to share the beauty and the value that all of the kids that you care for bring to the community at large. We have a pledge for inclusion at our website. It's pledgeforinclusion.org. We shared it at Stanford when we had a family night for a football game. We had 400 people attend. And we want to make all agencies starting to push the inclusion message so that the entire community is helping you. And you're not out there alone battling a system that really is not that supportive at times. So if you don't mind, go to Gatepath or go to the inclusion.org, and then you can sign the online pledge. Doesn't cost you anything. It's not going to go to a lobbyist. But we're trying to build momentum around inclusion. So with that, again, thank you everybody for being here, and you're going to have time with our panelists.